So we're recording, okay.
I remembered today.
That's great. So what have we got? Hang on, what's this first bullet point on the notes?
The first bullet point on the notes says Pete's cringy intro.
What are you on about? They are not cringy. Everyone loves them. And
I'm not going to dispute that some people enjoy your cringy intros, Pete, but
by you putting it in the notes and saying...
But they are cringy.
But by putting a cringy intro requirement in the notes rather than just intro and letting me freestyle it, I haven't got anything for you because they're not cringy.
Okay, so what have you prepared for me today, Pete?
I have prepared nothing for you, but you're going to want something now,
I do.
aren't you?
Okay. No, it's not just me. Everybody out there wants dad jokes, apparently.
What do you call a man with no nose and no name?
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Oh. That was great, Pete. Thanks. You know, the other day I was trying to sit down to have a game of cards with me boys and found that someone had glued the deck together. How do you deal with that? I thought I'd just throw a dad joke in as well.
You have succumbed.
I just had to do it.
Excellent.
I'm sorry.
No, that was good. I like that.
Excellent.
How do you deal with that? Yeah, that's
so
brilliant.
Thank you everybody for joining us on the podcast, whether you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or your favourite listening platform, or whether you're watching us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast. If you wish to gaze upon our beautiful visage.
Visage was the word I was going to use. Yeah, absolutely. You won't be disappointed if you don't open your eyes.
And top tip, because we are a little bit slow, if you do listen on YouTube, you can put the speed up to like 1.25 or 1.5, and my son tells me that's way more enjoyable.
Yeah, we sound like the chipmunks, but it helps you to get on with your life. So yeah, feel free to do that. Just out of interest, how many people listen to us like that? And should we then just do a really quick session so
just to throw them off?
whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we missed last week. We didn't do a podcast last week, and that's mainly because we did quite a lot in the previous weeks. So we've got a lot to talk about this week, but we'll try and keep it under control. So our main topic for this week is going to be the Windows event. Obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, then you'll know that Windows 11 has been launched and there's some consternation about various aspects of it. So we're going to...
Isn't there always?
We'll talk about it. Before we get into that, I want to comment on the video that I put up last week about the M1 iPad and its Thunderbolt proficiencies.
Or I'm not sure proficiency is the right word. But
deficiency, sorry, that's the one I was going for.
Yeah.
There is also a prize draw. So a few weeks ago on the channel, I reviewed the GMK Nook box, which is a sweet little PC. It's actually really good. It's a really good little thing. And we've been running a little competition. Haven't had a huge number of people entering, as probably won't come as a great surprise to anybody. We're not one of the massive channels out there. However, I've shortlisted 3, and you're going to pick a winner today.
Excellent.
And then we will indeed post the GMK Nook box out to you.
I also have a token use for it as well, which I'll come across as well.
But first of all, a few weeks ago we were talking about Apple's developer conference, obviously, and we brought up the DTK. This is the developer transition kit that Apple announced at WWDC last year.
Yeah.
And it was basically a Mac Mini with an A12 stuffed in it that developers could buy for $500 and then give back.
That's right.
And then Apple changed their stance on that and gave the developers a $500 voucher.
Well, originally Apple said you can buy this, which infers transfer of ownership, and then said no, it's actually a lease, which, to be fair, was in
the original
documentation and terms. And as you say, that there was then this promo code basically that you could apply.
Yeah, and then we obviously we in fact we even took a little bit of heat for this, but we feel that Apple wasn't fair to its developers at WWDC by not even mentioning the Apple Silicon transition. I think it was unkind of them to not give or heap. What Apple should have done is heaped praise on the developer community that have worked so hard on this transition, and they didn't do that. And then I saw this tweet from John Siracusa, And he just says, word to the wise. If you use the $500 DTK promo code on an Apple Store online order, do not cancel that order 10 minutes after placing it, unless you want to lose that $500 forever and or spend the next several hours on the phone with Apple, brackets, and still not get that money back. So,
oh dear.
What basically happened is he placed his order and then he realised that he should have done it on his Apple credit card for the additional points or whatever. I don't know the details because we don't get Apple Card here. And so he cancelled the order and then tried to replace it, and of course had lost his promo code. And then nobody at Apple knows how to deal with this. Now, long story short, he got it sorted out through Apple developer relations. And I think, but initially, when you see something like that, you just think this is yet another example of Apple not really doing what they needed to do for the developers.
It did seem like an afterthought. And I know there are two schools of thought on this, and many saying, well, why should Apple give out developer kits for free, or why should they give out engineer support time, all that kind of stuff for free? And it's like, well, we're not talking about doing it for free. We're talking about an even distribution here, because Apple, that time, that equipment costs money, but it's just been badly handled. It's not been very well thought through, and it's not like Apple, we do joke, but it's not like Apple couldn't have afforded to do this and covered themselves in glory, particularly with the developer community, which is so important for them.
Yeah, and I don't see why they couldn't just give the money back, but there we go. They've applied this credit, and at the end of the day, the guy's got it resolved through Apple developer relations. So he's talking to the developer relations team, and they've sorted it out. However, other people have since been tweeting and pointing out that you can't return anything that you've bought with the voucher. Okay. So, which of course is, once you're buying something with a voucher, then the terms and conditions change and all the rest of it. So, I don't think it's a great result. I think Apple needs to just stop and take stock. They're massive shouting at the moment about this, new building, the new Apple Store they've opened, the theatre place, and are constantly getting involved in social and political issues that a corporation probably doesn't have any business commenting on, and particularly when they're then ignoring real issues. They need developers to support the transition. Yeah. They should be doing they should be falling over backwards to help these guys to bring great apps onto their platform. Because without those apps, would you go out and buy Apple M1?
You need something to run on it, don't you? And you touched on the point here. Every business should stick to their swim lane first and ace that, and then if you've got time, capacity and resource left over, if you feel the need to comment on other areas of life, by all means, that's a decision for each corporation or business. But if you're doing that at the expense of your core business, then you've got a problem. Funnily enough, I saw, without wanting to diversify too much, a comment the other day on LinkedIn from someone we're both connected with. We've done some speaking for this particular guy up in London on the subject of agency. And he made a comment about the amount of businesses that are now going out of their swim lanes, as we call it, so their area of expertise, and offering advice on things that just don't seem to fit with them. So a classic example, and you'll probably see others of this now, is in the UK there's a company called Hillary's Blinds, and they fit window blinds. Very good company, slightly pricey, but good company. So I've ordered some blinds from there and been put on their marketing list. And I'm getting emails about health and fitness and recipes from a blind company. And it's like, why just stick to blinds? It's all this content driven. You have to generate content that people are engaged with.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to it. I just think there's a lot of noise out there, and I think all these companies are trying to be heard. But the best way to be heard is to develop a brilliant product and give your customers stellar service. If you want to grow a business, that's how you do it. Yeah. And Apple, I think, doesn't listen to its customers. It's pretty tone deaf. It does what it wants to do. And, we've been criticised recently, actually, for being very critical of Apple. And I'll say it again. I've always said I don't like Apple as a company. I don't like their corporate behaviour. I like some of their products. not all of them, but I like some of their products. So I think that's okay to be in that position. But Apple are the ones who set themselves up as the environmental leaders, and yes, they've done some fantastic things to support the environment in the way that they build their products. But they're also making some massive fails in that respect. And they talk about giving customers a great experience and all the rest of it with their devices, but they give them such a shoddy experience outside of that in some cases, not in every case. But
No. We've always been made it clear that we like, as you said, many Apple products, but we are not Apple fanboys. Particularly on the podcast channel, this is more opinion driven. So we give our own point of view to a degree, as opposed to the main channel, youtube.com/constant geekery, where you're being very impartial and just assessing things on the face of it.
Certainly try to be impartial, but doesn't always come across that way. But we'll come back to that in a moment.
But yeah, on the podcast channel, you can expect opinion, and we are not Apple fanboys. We're not Windows fanboys. We're, funnily enough, geeks. Yeah. So we will. If something's a spade, we will call it a spade.
Yeah, and you don't have to agree with us to enjoy the podcast. By the way, folks, that's fine. And we're always interested in having a little debate, as long as it's always done in a polite and respectful way.
That's the heart of good Platoism.
Yes, good. I don't know what you just said, but
no, neither do I. It just popped out of my head.
Let's select a winner for the GMK Nook box. Now, what we asked folks to do was to come up with a creative idea on how you would use it. Obviously, there are limits to how creative you can get. At the end of the day, it is a PC running. There's only so many things you can do with it. So I've just picked 5 off of the twits.
Okay. Do you want me to just choose one, or do you want me to read them all out?
No, I'm going to read them out, and then you can choose one. So here's suggestion number 1. The GMK Nook box would be perfect as a streaming PC for Steam (brackets), although it would be better with an Ethernet port. Yeah, it would definitely need an Ethernet port. But you could do that. You could just put a USB Ethernet adapter on. They don't cost very much money. And a little box like that sat behind your television.
That would be cool. That would be very cool. I like that idea.
Yeah. I have to say, as soon as I saw that, I was sort of thinking, oh, yeah, I've got to give it away. But I was thinking that because, of course, my big, powerful workstation is in my cabin office in the garden type thing, and that's a long way away from my sitting room. So that would be quite cool. So I like that idea. Here's another one that I quite liked. I would use it as a portable Plex media server, assuming you can find a USB-C battery. That would work.
Yeah, nice idea. Particularly, if you're away from civilization and feel the need to access your media. Great idea.
Yeah. And the final one that I quite liked, I'm torn between a NAS and a hockey puck, or maybe a mean Linux server. I quite like that. Yeah. Please don't use it as a hockey puck. But it is that small.
It is. It is tiny. It's very cute, and it would be the most sophisticated but probably fragile hockey puck, because those things take a beating.
Anyway, there were other suggestions, but I thought those were the 3 that interested me. So you can pick one of those, Pete. Which of those suggestions do you like?
Would you like to know what I'd use it for?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, because you've called it a Nuck box.
Well, I haven't called it that. GMK called it that.
Okay, because I read it as nuke box. Okay, so I was thinking, if you ever wanted to plant a bomb somewhere, you could use it as the controller, and then it really would be.
There's all sorts of algorithms all over the place that are going to be analysing our content. We're going to get watched now, aren't we, by people?
Well, more subscribers, and it was just a joke, NSA. Okay, just saying.
Just a joke.
Yeah, so I read it as nuke box. So
could be a good kind of retro gaming rig for Duke Nukem. You knew where I was going with that, didn't you?
That was a bit cringy. But okay.
It was extremely cringy, but I couldn't leave you hanging, Pete.
Right, well, I appreciate that. So I am going to go for Carlos Storm's suggestion. I'm torn between a NAS and a hockey puck, or maybe a mean Linux server. So you got 3 choices there. I nominate Carlos.
Okay.
I'd love to know if you do. Please don't use it as a hockey puck. But if you do, get some video of it and send it in, because we'd
like to see it.
We would.
I don't think GMK would like to see it. And bear in mind, they very kindly sponsored this and supplied the computer. So by all means, check out GMK's stuff. I have to say, genuinely, if you haven't watched the review, it's on the main channel. Have a look at it. It is genuinely an interesting little computer, although it has some faults. But for what it is and what you pay for it, it's astonishing. Really,
I'm just going to say, no device is without faults.
No, well, absolutely.
There is no perfect device.
No, unfortunately, but it is incredible what you get for the money. The level of performance, really good. So, Carlos Storms, I will drop you a tweet just to let you know that you've won, and what you need to do is just email us with your address wherever you are in the world, and we will figure out how to get this thing to you. It does have a European power plug with it, so you'll have to negotiate that carefully.
If you're talking hockey puck, I suspect it may be going to Canada.
Possibly.
But other hockey playing nations do exist, so I may be making a massive generalisation.
Could be anywhere. Could be South America for all you know, Pete.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, that's exciting. First competition that we've done, and actually, no, it's not. It's the second competition we've done.
Yeah, we did the Chromebook, didn't we?
That went to Canada, funnily enough.
It did.
Yeah, good. And let's move on. I put up a video because I was doing some testing of the M1 iPad and its Thunderbolt speeds. And the reason that I wanted to do this is because of the way Apple advertises it. Okay. Now, I'm actually just gonna call up their website.
So typey, and you are actually using the M1 iPad Pro
to do
this. But obviously, browsing the internet is not affected by Thunderbolt.
When it comes to the M1 iPad Pro, I don't think anything is affected by Thunderbolt, as it turns out. But let's scroll down the page. So you've got all these adverts, for the amazing screen with its 10,000 mini LEDs and its fast Wi-Fi, the cameras. Eventually, we get down to this bit. And I'm going to turn my iPad around just for a second, just so you can see what I'm referring to if you happen to be watching on YouTube.
Thunderbolt, a port that's ready to rumble.
That's excellent.
That reminds me of that Ant and Dec song. Do you remember that?
No, I don't. Oh. I don't Ant and Dec, so I don't remember.
Yeah, but it's from the 90s, right after Biker Grove. This is all UK references, so apologies to our...
I didn't do any of that stuff, Pete. I was too busy sat in front of my Amiga programming in the 90s. That's what I mainly was doing.
That's why you are where you are in your life, and I'm citing Ant and Dec songs from the late 90s. They wrote a song called, and performed a song called "Let's Get Ready to Rumble." Look it up on Spotify. It's top quality entertainment. Yeah, not now, now. Put it in your queue.
So Thunderbolt, full stop, new line. A port that's ready to rumble, full stop.
I've already said that.
I just thought I'd get across the vibe. Okay, now bold text for powerful, creative workflows, full stop. And then the little paragraph of text says, now with Thunderbolt, this is the fastest, most versatile port ever on iPad. It works with existing USB-C connectors and opens up an extensive ecosystem of high-performance accessories for iPad Pro, like fast external storage, displays, and docks. Transfer huge assets or even drive the Pro Display XDR at full 6K resolution. And next to that, it says, you've got very bold and big letters, 40 gigabits per second, which is the Thunderbolt theoretical limit. And it says up to, in small letters, up to 40 gigabits per second bandwidth for wired connections. So that's Apple's advert for the iPad Pro. They are clearly, well, you tell me, Pete, what do you get from that? If you've never had an iPad before, or you've got the current USB-C iPad as you have, you're looking at that as a creative professional, someone who has lots of large files or assets, as they refer to it there. And how do you determine that?
Well, that is first of all, it's a headline feature. That's it's got its own page essentially within the landing page, its own screen, and they're beefing it up, they're bigging it up, they're making it a key point. So, if I didn't know better, which I do, but if I didn't know better, I'd be going, maybe that's going to make my workflow more efficient. Maybe that's going to make me be able to move files around more efficiently and do more than I can with my current USB-C iPad Pro or or some other device, or if I've never had one before, it's like, wow, okay, that's cool.
So I tested it, the videos on the main channel, and what I found was that a standard Samsung T5 USB-C drive is faster on the M1 iPad Pro than an brand new NVMe drive in a Thunderbolt enclosure. And even to the point where we got down to advertising 40 gigabits per second. And let's just be clear here. There's a PCI Express overhead. There's a Thunderbolt overhead. So no device will ever achieve 40 gigabits per second. But there's a difference between that, theoretical limit and getting close to it and running at about 0.8 gigabits per second, which was the write speed going to that NVMe drive.
Right, so that's about 0.2%.
Yeah.
Sorry, 2% of what it could be up to. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. And the thing is, this isn't some unique drive or anything like that. I tested in the video, I tested the M1 Mac Mini, and I tested our i9 iMac upstairs. And actually, the M1 Mac Mini was faster than the i9 iMac for Thunderbolt.
Okay. So it's not a limitation on the M1 architecture either?
No, not at all. It's specific to this particular device that's being advertised with this port.
And I think it's important to note for those that perhaps are going, oh, well, why are you making such a fuss about it? It's because it's marketed that way, and it's because the iPad Pro is aimed at creative professionals, as you say, and so moving bigger files around quickly is a big part of what a creative professional would do and would be interested in, whether you're doing videography, photography, all that kind of stuff. Big files are de rigueur.
Yeah, and here's the thing. What else would you use Thunderbolt for? Okay, Apple say fast external storage, docks, and
XDR.
And the Pro XDR display. Well, if you've got a Pro XDR display, if you spent the $6,000 on that, and you've got one kicking around and you want to plug your iPad into it, that's great. However, you still get the same issues where you can only mirror the screen, you get the wrong aspect ratio, so it is effectively useless. Apart from Luma Fusion, where you can run your video preview on the external display, and Apple pictures that on that same product page, and I think that's misleading. It's a little bit misleading. So, and let's just be clear here: this is only Thunderbolt external displays that it's talking about. So, the cheapest Thunderbolt displays, you're knocking on the door of $1,000, aren't you, for the cheapest 4K Thunderbolt display, the LG one, I think. So, we're not talking about a massive demographic of people who would buy this purely for an external display.
No.
And you can run the same sort of displays, although admittedly not that 6K one, on the iPad that you've got there over USB-C. So this doesn't actually materially change anything for most users.
For me, it does beg the question, the more we look at the M1 iPad Pro, what is it actually for? What is the point of it?
Well, and herein lies the issue. So let me just finish on the Thunderbolt port, because I got some thoughts on that. But
okay. That's all right.
With the Thunderbolt port, so we've ruled out screens as really being a major reason to buy it, unless you've already got a Thunderbolt display that you want to use with your iPad. Using a dock, I've got a Thunderbolt dock. In fact, after we finish this, I'm going to be recording a video using the M1 iPad with the Thunderbolt dock, and that'll be on the main channel later this week. The dock offers additional Thunderbolt ports, so you could plug in multiple drives. But does that give you any benefit over doing the same thing with USB, other than the fact you can access Thunderbolt storage very slowly? It gives you Ethernet, but you can have that with a USB-C dongle. You can have external monitors with a USB-C dongle. What does a dock give you that you can't already have via USB-C? And bear in mind, the dock I'm going to use today cost me, paid out of my own pocket, £330 for it.
Of the realm.
Yeah. And a USB dongle is what, 30 quid? Something like that.
And this is already an incredibly expensive device.
Yeah.
So I'm stumped. I really am. Normally, what happens when we try and keep parity with our equipment, don't we? And occasionally we're out of sync for some reason. And normally you can't help but think, I wish I had the better one. Better in, again, deploy air quotes, better one. I have not had an ounce of that. Apart from, I quite like your keyboard and case, but not enough to go out and get one yet. I have no desire to go and get one.
No, but I think I agree with you, and we upgrade our equipment periodically, and it's about the right time. And I wanted to review it on the channel, which is why I got it. Right. A lot of people who are going out and buying an iPad for the first time, let's just be absolutely clear here. The M1 iPad Pro is still the best iPad that you can buy. But if you've already got one of the previous models, the 2018 or the 2020, would you get a great benefit from upgrading? Probably not, unless you really want that screen. So just coming back to Thunderbolt again, because I haven't finished my point, and you keep sidetracking me, Pete.
It's not like me.
So Thunderbolt, the only purpose for it, having ruled out all of these other purposes which can be achieved via much cheaper USB-C devices, even on the M1 iPad, you can still use a USB-C dongle. So the only reason to have Thunderbolt is if you've already got a Thunderbolt display that you want to use, which I think is a minuscule demographic.
Agreed.
Or you want to use fast Thunderbolt storage, which is probably quite a large demographic.
Agreed.
Right. So if that doesn't work, if you're running at 1/50th of the performance, is that right? I've probably done that. I've probably done my maths wrong. If you're running though, however, at such a low performance, what's the point?
Yeah.
If a basic USB-C drive is faster, why would you go to that trouble? And so then I've had a little bit of grief over this from the Apple fanboys,
really?
who are like
Quelle surprise.
First of all, I had a guy claiming that I was just looking for something negative to say about the iPad in order to get the clicks and the revenue, which is just like, yeah, you obviously don't know how the world of economics work.
Yeah, and check the subscribers and view counts. It don't work.
Yeah, just in case you're curious, folks, 1,000 views is somewhere between £2 and £3 of ad revenue.
Ooh.
Yeah. So to make that video about the Thunderbolt Speed, I bought out of my own pocket a brand new Western Digital NVMe drive. I can't remember what it cost me, but best part of £100. I've already bought the enclosure, which I don't actually use. I only bought it for reviewing on the channel, and so you've got all of those costs, not to mention the 10 plus hours of my time in editing the video and everything else. And I don't know how many views it's had. Do you know, Tom? About 2,500 views in just under a week. So the mighty £6 that I've raised off of that doesn't come anywhere close to covering my costs. So no, I'm not looking for bad things to say about the iPad just to get ad revenue. Yeah. And had I plugged all of that stuff in, I'd have reported what I found. If it had all worked, I would have reported that.
Yeah.
So I'm just simply reporting on what I'm finding, and I'm not the only one. Other reviewers are saying the same thing.
And can I just say, those who are making those comments about, you're just looking for something negative. Well, actually, I put to you that if you were buying one of these and you weren't aware of that issue and you bought one, and then found out that a reviewer that you trust knew about that issue but didn't want to say anything negative, that completely destroys any trust you've got in that reviewer. So, yeah, sometimes things are negative, but you can still go out and buy it if you want it.
Absolutely. Spend your money how you like. I always say that. If it's what you want, go and buy it. That's what I do. The same person, actually, then he was saying, well, you know that the limitation is iPad OS. So it will get fixed in the next iPad OS. So what are you moaning about? Well, first of all, I don't know that it's going to get fixed in the next iPad OS, and certainly the first beta edition didn't fix it. Whether it's been fixed since, I don't know. And I don't run the developer edition of iPad OS on here because this is actually my machine that I use, so I need a reliable OS on it. So I'm not one of those who's going to go out and install the developer beta. I don't think that argument stacks up. And let me give an analogy. So the other thing that Apple shouted about with this iPad is the XDR display, the mini LED display with its 10,000 mini LEDs, and they shout about that and its HDR support. How would you feel if after buying it you found that only 2% of those LEDs were switching on? would you go, oh, well, that sucks a bit, but it's okay because they'll probably fix it in iPadOS 15. They say Apple's saying it supports HDR, but actually it quite clearly doesn't come anywhere close to the HDR standard. But no, that's fine. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with just getting a fraction of what should be available to me based on Apple's advertising. Really? I don't think anyone would accept that.
No.
So
it's a classic example of people, they would, you couldn't get away with that because it's visual. But because, particularly if you're not using this for data transfer speeds, I can see why people think, well, why are you so upset about it? But the whole point is that was one of the things Apple was making a big song and dance about to attract creative professionals. That's what they said. So it doesn't work.
Yeah. And just to be clear as well, I've had conversations with people who have gone out and spent loads of money on Thunderbolt drives and docks to go with their M1 iPad based on Apple's advertising. So people do spend their hard-earned cash we all do. You research a product, you look at the specifications and the advertising, and then you make a decision on whether or not to purchase it on those things.
Absolutely, and there's nothing worse if you get something and then find there's something in it that you were relying on for your use case that either doesn't work or doesn't work as advertised. That's galling.
It is. And that's a point that you just raised there, your use case. And that's the thing. A lot of people are just, their comment is, well, what's even the point of an iPad when you can buy a MacBook? Well, that may work for you. That's your use case. You can't see a use for the iPad, or it doesn't fit your workflow. That's fine. Use the MacBook. But for some people, the iPad is important to their workflow. It does fit their workflow. So everybody has different needs. And some people will have bought the iPad on the basis of Thunderbolt support and will be asking why they're in this position where it quite clearly doesn't work. And Apple won't respond on the issue. They'll never, they won't. If you contact Apple for a comment on this issue, they're not going to respond.
No.
I actually tweeted Tim Cook. He hasn't responded. He's too busy counting his pension fund. Just get that in before you do.
No, the tweet's probably still on its way to Mars. It takes about 3 months to get there, doesn't it?
So I think we could talk about iPad a lot more. And you raised the question earlier, what is it actually for? And I think that's an interesting discussion. And I think people
maybe for another day.
I think it is for another day. And it seems to be quite a contentious issue. And lots of people, I'm seeing this all the time, comments about don't buy hardware on the promise of future whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay, that is true. That is completely true. You shouldn't buy hardware on the basis of future software. Yeah, or even the absence of promises. But if you're like me, you're just upgrading anyway, and I got my order in early because I knew they would be in short supply. I actually ordered mine immediately. The ordering became open, and the following day, we ordered one for our MD of the business, and he only got his last week.
Yeah.
So I knew that supply would be short. I wanted to review it on the channel, so I got in quick. What that means is that 2 days before the WWDC announcements on iPadOS 15, my return window closed. And iPadOS 15 is a disappointment. Let's just be clear about that. It is a disappointment. And the thing is, people who are upgrading, or people who are not upgrading but just wanted an iPad, if you go out and say, well, I'd like a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, what is the current available? Oh, it's the M1. Okay, I'll buy that. And then you look at all the specs and go, oh, that's nice. And then you get the thing, and you're looking at it and thinking, well, how do I actually use it? How do I get access to this performance?
Yeah.
So it is a topic that needs discussion.
It is. So maybe next week's podcast, and let's see what the comments yield, shall we? I am aware, as interesting in the motive as that is, that we haven't even got onto our main topic of the week, and we're standing rudely at about 34 minutes into the podcast.
Yeah, but we fluffed a couple of intros, so it's probably closer to 30 minutes.
Nobody needs to know that.
That still gives us 30 minutes-ish for our main topic, Pete. I think it'll be fine.
The Windows event.
The Windows event.
Do you like my little fanfare there?
It was an exceptional little fanfare.
Excellent.
So we did talk about maybe covering this live. In the event, I ended up doing some building work with my dad and completely missing the event. So I watched it a couple of hours later. And what did you think about the presentation of the event?
Well, I have to confess, I didn't watch it live, and I watched it at 1.75 times speed afterwards, because there was some really nice stuff in it. I like the analogy at the beginning of how we have places in our life where we feel familiar, we feel safe, we know where things are, typically our homes, but it could be other things as well. And using that analogy for Windows, and that is true. You can still move between various versions of Windows and know roughly where you're going. So I thought that was a good analogy. But then it descended into, and Apple are just as guilty of this, as I'm sure other tech companies are, about getting quite emotive and soppy about what an amazing impact all this has on our lives. Which I'm sure it does. It does. Technology does have a positive and a negative impact on our lives, but it's all just a little bit tired about how amazing everything is and how it touches our lives in so many ways. It's just like it comes back to that thing I was saying earlier about swim lanes. It's like, you're a technology company. We understand Windows has been around for 30 years, and yes, it does all these amazing things, and it is. Whether you like it or not, whether you use Windows or not, it is part of your life. Lots of tills and other things run on it. It does impact our lives. But stop waxing lyrical about it and just tell us what the goodies are. And there was far too much of that navel gazing. Nasal gaving. There you go. That's
a whole new term.
That's a whole new T-shirt there. I've been nasal gaving. Navel gazing stuff where the company's waxing lyrical about all the amazing things they do and getting very emotional about things. And maybe it's just me. Maybe you guys feel differently, but I'm really pleased I listened to it at 1.75.
Yeah, it was an interesting presentation. They had some technical hitches, which was a little bit embarrassing for them, I think. And I think they're trying a little bit too hard to copy Apple, but you're not Apple. And, you should embrace what you are. People like Windows because it's not Apple in a lot of cases. So why try to be Apple? I don't really understand that. And I'm not sure who the guy was who was presenting it. I'm not as familiar with the Microsoft staff. But he talked about how excited he was that we could all be there for the event, and he said it without any expression on his face whatsoever. It was quite a bizarre presentation from that point of view. And then it sort of went into these animated sequences of showing what Windows 11 had, but I don't know about the version you watched, but on the version I watched, there was no sound over that.
Yeah, there was for me. I guess they must have fixed the stream post.
So let's start off by talking about how people feel about it, and then we'll maybe talk about how we feel about Windows 11. Do you use Windows much now?
No. Not through it. That's not through any active choice. I just have no need to. So I have got a gaming PC at home, too, actually. But my family use them more than me. I just don't have time for it. But I've used Windows in the past, and there's lots of things about Windows I really like.
Yeah. So I'm fairly ambivalent. I'll use Windows or Mac OS. I've got both, and at the moment I probably spend a bit more time in Windows than I do in Mac OS, but it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Depends what I'm feeling. I just enjoy being able to use anything. It's great. I asked the question on the channel. I just did a poll. Are you excited about Windows 11? And we had 807 votes so far. And of all of those, 53% selected the option meh, same meat, different gravy. And the point I was getting across there is that really under the skin, it's still Windows 10, although they have started fixing some fairly fundamental things that need to be fixed. One of the things that, of course, holds Windows back is this backwards compatibility issue.
Yeah.
The need to be compatible with 32-bit apps and old stuff, and it's very difficult for Microsoft to move things on. They can't do what Apple does, and in fact, Microsoft have tried to do that. And we're going to discuss this in a minute, and it seems to not have gone down well. So the majority of people are fairly underwhelmed by it, and I suspect part of that is because somehow it got leaked about 2 weeks prior to the event, so everyone had already seen Windows 11 by the time the event actually happened.
Which is a shame, I think.
I think it's a shame. Yeah, why are people so desperate to? Well, I know why they're so desperate to see it, but and be first online with their reviews. But that's the world we live in now, and I kind of miss the old days when a new version of Windows came out and they told us what was in it, and we didn't
know. Yeah. It's like when you go to the cinema, and I'm guilty of this, and you watch or read spoilers for a film, or even a series on Netflix, and you do it because you can't wait, and you want to know what's going to happen. But I tell you what, the best films are the ones where you don't know what's going to happen, and it takes you by surprise. And I haven't had that in a long time because I'm a bit of a spoiler kind of nerd. But when you do go and see something that it's not been on your radar and you just go and watch it, it's so refreshing. And maybe we're just used to spoilers too much.
Yeah. So it has been spoiled a little bit. I will say from the poll, 21% say they love the fresh new look, and that's where I put myself.
Does look good. Looks gorgeous, actually.
It does, and it's one of the main differences. So speaking here as someone who actively does work in both operating systems, there are, of course, fundamental differences, but those differences have narrowed over time.
Yeah.
There are fewer differences, and you can, app snapping, for example, in Mac OS, you download Magnet or some other app, don't you, to get that functionality that you get in Windows and Linux. So people want these different features from different OSs in the OS that they favour, and so there's always ways of achieving that.
Yeah.
So the actual differences between the operating systems in terms of actually getting work done, it's not that great anymore, is it? Is it really that fundamentally different to type a Word document on Mac OS than it is on Windows?
Absolutely not. I mean, there was, with the previous version of some of the Office apps, things that were actually better on Windows. There was more functionality, but that seems to be coalescing into a common UI now, so that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, there are some more advanced features like the ODBC stuff if you're connecting up your Excel sheets to databases and things. But generally speaking, for most people, there isn't a great deal of difference. They read each other's file systems for the most part. With the help of some plugins, you can resolve any issues.
But it's no different. It makes sense that those features are becoming common. It's a bit like cars, isn't it? I've been watching on YouTube some old car videos from sort of late 70s, early 80s bad British cars, like British Leyland. If you again, worth watching for a bit of nostalgia if you remember those sort of things. Some of the cars my parents had, and early Ford Fiestas and Escorts and Granadas and all that sort of thing, and how awful they looked. But what's happened is car shapes have kind of coalesced. There aren't that much difference because they're all modelled in a computer to be aerodynamic, low drag coefficient and all that kind of thing, apart from the odd turkey out there like the Toyota Prius.
God, that is an ugly car, isn't it? Oh, the new one. Oh, dear me.
Some vehicles you can find an angle. You think actually from that angle it looks good.
But the thing is, my wife has the I can't even remember the name of it now. The Corolla.
And that's a lovely looking car.
It looks really good, and it has the same engine from. Actually, it's more powerful than the one that's in the Prius, but it's the same technology.
But you do see that sometimes, don't you, with vehicles? I'm sure you've seen it. You look at it and you go, "What were they thinking?" Someone looked at that and went,
"Yeah." Every new BMW with the beaver teeth grills. Yeah. We've digressed into cars again, which seems to be a regular thing. We ought to maybe start some kind of other channel about cars. I think the look, getting back to the point, the look is the biggest difference between macOS and Windows, and I feel that macOS is a much slicker experience. And I think
even compared to Windows 11.
Well, I've not tried Windows 11 yet.
Okay.
So, but compared to Windows 10. And it's things like the way the windows, when you drag a window across the screen, the way it smoothly moves. Yeah. The rendering engine is just better for some reason. The way stuff looks, the user interface, the styling and everything else, it just feels more polished. Windows you don't have to look far, and you end up in, some control panel somewhere with an icon that probably came from Windows 95, and it's just not as consistent and polished. And they've been working to kind of migrate the control panel into the new settings app, but it's still not fully done. There's still stuff you've got to go back into the old system, editing the registry.
I love editing the registry.
Nobody loves editing the registry, Pete.
I once had a job where knowing registry settings for a particular set of apps was a big part of my job, and I loved it.
Most people don't want to edit the registry. They just want to use their computer, and I have to say macOS is better than Windows for that, in my opinion. But a lot of the differences between the systems is the visual thing. So if Windows is still Windows 10 under the surface with some improvements, I've got no issue with that whatsoever, because Windows 10 is actually really good in my experience. And if it now looks more polished, what's not to like about that?
I think it's good.
What are people expecting? Reinvention of the wheel. If they want, this is what frustrates me, because you've got a group of people who will argue that Windows haven't done enough. Microsoft has not done enough with this new version of Windows. It's not a big enough change.
Well, what are they expecting?
Well, and this is the thing. And then because Microsoft has then imposed some limits, which we need to talk about, on what spec of computer can run Windows 11, what they're trying to do is move the system on to more powerful machines so that maybe they can do more of that stuff instead of being constantly held back, hobbled by the backwards compatibility. And yet when they try to do that, everyone's upset about that as well. So it seems to me like, what's Microsoft supposed to do? They can't win. They want to move the operating system on. You've got to let loose all of those very cheap, very low-powered computers.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
I think the way that they could have resolved this is by having a separate version of Windows that runs on these lower-powered machines. So a separate version of Windows 11.
Kind of like a legacy version.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't do that, or keep supporting Windows 10 for a lot longer and put a new theme on Windows 10. As well, so to give people some of the new stuff.
You've got to think that Microsoft have had those discussions internally.
I'm sure they have.
And they are in a really envious but tricky position, because we come across it in the web industry. The amount of times we have to build websites that still support old versions of Internet Explorer. Fortunately, starting to go away, but for years we've had to support. Up until not that long ago, things like IE8, but certainly up until right now, still IE11, because some corporate networks rely on IE11 to run old, backward compatible intranet systems that use things like ActiveX controls and things like that. Very frustrating, because it means you then can't develop a website. Well, you can develop a website with more exciting technologies, but you then have to write a load of code to accommodate these older browsers that don't support those exciting new technologies. So I do understand when Microsoft is in a really tricky position trying to manage these different needs.
Yeah, and you can't look at Apple and compare them to Microsoft, because Apple control the hardware. That's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, this new look, so the basic gist of it is it's a new design language. You get rounded corners on the windows, which just does look a little bit better. There's this kind of glass theme going on, which I think looks really nice. It's a nice piece of design.
Nice. Yeah, it is. Full marks. I didn't see anything in it that I thought, there was no bottle feeding battery indicator or anything like that.
No. They've centered the start menu.
Yeah.
Which I think is a kind of Mac thing. You can still move it back to the left. You can do what you want. You can do the same thing on your Mac if you want to. So you've got control over that. I don't understand why people are upset that it's in the middle. If you don't like it in the middle, move it back to the left. I think it looks quite nice. Sorry?
People upset about it?
Yeah, because of muscle memory going down to the bottom left for the start menu.
Muscle?
Well, you jest, but if somebody's regularly, it slows them down. They don't want to be
back to the left then.
They can move it
back to the left.
There's some new features which are not necessarily features that are unique to Windows or that Microsoft have themselves created. Let's just acknowledge that first of all. but you can dock your multitasking split screen views.
Yes.
I think they call it shelves. And so you can have a particular setup, and that can then be, what's the word, minimized to the... I
Shelf.
don't even know what they call it anymore.
The thing.
The thing at the bottom of the screen. So that's quite cool that you can do that. And this is where it gets really, really smart. If you've got a laptop, and this is our exact use case, laptop, you go back to your desk and you dock it and you get an external display. And how many times have you had this, Pete, where you've got everything set up just the way you want it, Windows on the laptop screen, Windows set up on the external display, and then someone calls you and you've got to head into a meeting, so you've got to grab your laptop, so you unplug it, everything goes everywhere. You go and do your meeting, you come back and you plug your monitor back in, nothing goes back to where it was.
More than once. Yeah.
Well, now, apparently it will remember and go back. In fact, I say apparently, it does. The only question I've got is whether if you then make changes in those apps whilst you're not connected to the external monitor, whether it will still remember the layout. Nonetheless,
that's a really, really cool. Those two features are great because, again, how many times are we either in running the business mode, which is spreadsheets and Word documents, a bit of email, or we're in video editing mode, which is a completely different suite of apps. You often need to flick between the two. So this multitasking docking is brilliant.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good thing. Other stuff that's coming, Android app support. So you can download stuff off the Amazon store. You can also sideload APKs. So if you're into your Android apps, you can run them on Windows. I can see a use for that. There may be apps that you can get on your phone or your tablet that you don't get on the Microsoft Store that you want to have on your computer, and now you can. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Gaming integration.
Yes. Windows and PC is the gaming mecca, isn't it? Really, Are you a PC gamer?
I am.
I'm just thinking back to those Intel adverts, but
I'm also quite happy gaming on a Mac or my Xbox, or a Switch. I'm not fussy about it.
No.
So there's a tractor going past our rural office. So.
Don't worry about that then. So HDR was one of the things.
Oh yeah, so this auto HDR function makes games look better
without anyone having to do anything. The operating system does that, which is cool. Is it the direct storage?
I haven't.
Bypasses the need for the CPU to handle assets and go straight to the graphics card for lightning quick, I think they said, gaming experiences.
Yeah, so a more sort of unified memory approach, much like Apple are doing.
I was going to say, similar to someone else we know, but fair play. That's going to be good. If you game on a PC, which probably most people who game do sometimes game on a PC, this is going to be good.
Yeah, so tighter integration as well. If you get the Game Pass, you can download stuff on your Xbox and on your PC, and they're trying to advance the cross-platform multiplayer gaming as well. So all great stuff. A lot of people who use Windows are gamers, so they'll love all of those improvements. Yeah. Something that Microsoft focused on quite a bit was the Teams integration.
Yes.
And they sort of tried this already with Skype, haven't they? And I detest the fact that it puts Skype on because I don't use Skype. We do use Teams as a business, Pete. And how would you describe the experience of Teams compared to, say, Zoom?
Depends what you're doing. For video calling, Zoom is better. I would say there are other things, for collaboration and messaging, Teams is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I haven't had so many poor video conferencing experiences with Teams as others have, but I acknowledge they happen. So I think Zoom are ahead at the moment, but I can't believe that Microsoft will be working hard to get Teams up to the same level of reliability that Zoom is. Yeah.
So they're bringing better integration. So you've got us, basically what they want is iMessage/FaceTime, but a PC version. Except of course that you can get Teams on every device, every platform, every OS.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing. I don't see why. Again, people are vilifying Microsoft for doing this. I don't see why Microsoft shouldn't have a messaging/video conference system built into their OS.
Not these days. I mean, it's central, and Apple do it. No one gets upset about that.
No. It seems a bit of a unlevel playing field sometimes with these things. They've made some changes to the Windows Store. Particularly, they allow people, and this is a direct dig at Apple, they allow companies on the App Store to bring in their own merch payment platforms, basically. So if they've got a subscription platform or something, then they can bring in their own mechanism for doing that, and Microsoft won't take any fees off of that.
Yeah, which is obviously very different from Apple's store.
Yeah, it is. I think there's
arguments for and against that, though, isn't there?
There is, and it is a huge can of worms that I think is probably not advisable to open at this late juncture of the podcast.
We're going to leave that can well and truly on the shelf and the can opener in the drawer.
Okay, and let's just extract another can off the shelf. So the upgrade is going to be free to Windows 10 users. However, you need to have a PC that supports it, and we've alluded to this already. Now, Microsoft have released this checking tool that you can download to see if your PC is compatible. And lots of people are running the tool and finding that it's saying their PC is not compatible. And so there is much
consternation
on the social medias. I think the first thing I would say is this will get sorted, and they're not releasing this until the end of the year. I'm sure that things will change.
You now realise by having said that, someone's going to say to you, you just told Apple off because OS 15 will eventually sort out Thunderbolt, and now you're saying it's okay because Microsoft do it. Not the same thing, guys.
It's completely not the same thing at all. Microsoft is not advertising a piece of functionality that you then have to pay for on the basis that...
Or wait for.
Yeah, no, it's not the same. What they're saying for Windows is it needs a trusted platform module in your computer. Now, and a lot of people who will run the checker will find that it says they haven't got one. But actually, they probably have, because I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong on this, please correct me in the comments if I'm off base with this, but I'm pretty sure TPM is integrated into certainly Intel CPUs and has been for many years. And it is just a case of switching it on in the BIOS if it isn't already switched on. So I think most people won't be affected by that. There may be certain laptops and things that probably don't have the required hardware. There may be people who have chips that don't have it integrated, but you might find there's a header on your motherboard for the little device that costs less than $20 until they all get sculpted, of course. Which
no, there's an idea.
The other, what was the other? The requirement is secure boot, UEFI BIOS, and GPT ID. Have I got that right? Not master boot record anyway on your hard disk partition. Again, you might find that actually your computer supports it, but it just requires you to reformat your hard disk or reset up your hard disk. The biggest thing that people are complaining about is that as things stand, although I've heard today that Microsoft are already making changes to this, but as things stand, the first generation of Ryzen is not supported, and 7th gen Intel and below is not supported. So you need a Core i3, i5, i7, i9, 8th gen or later to run Windows 11, or you need 2nd or 3rd generation Ryzen. And a lot of people are upset about that.
And this is where Windows or Microsoft fall between two stools, don't they? Because you've got they're trying to push forward, and people are complaining they're not doing enough. But when they try and push forward and say, well, you need these specs, people go, well, that's not very fair for the people who haven't got those specs. So I do feel for Microsoft.
Yeah, I do feel for them. I think this isn't a deliberate thing. I don't think they're trying to upset people. They've just drawn an arbitrary line and divided up the processors, and I suspect they'll change that because their own Surface top of the range thing comes with a 7th gen Intel processor.
Actually, a lot of companies do this, folks. Bear in mind, this isn't quite ready yet. So a lot of companies will state something as fact and then see the response as a form of market research. It's actually quite an effective way. So if there was no hoo-ha about not supporting 7th generation Intel, then they probably gone, okay, well we're good to go ahead with this. But there is a bit of a hoo-ha, so they're going to de-hoo-ha it. It would seem.
I expect so. I'm sure because the simple truth is that Ryzen first generation should be capable of running Windows 11 as would some older Intel CPUs. So I'm sure it will get changed, but it will be a process of they need to identify which of those give the required experience, and that's probably a fairly in-depth task.
I would think so. It's not always easy. Do you cast your mind back to Vista, and they brought out the Aero interface? Do you remember that? And you couldn't run that below a certain spec, and you had to go back to something a bit grottier.
So we'll see what happens. I'm personally, I'm quite excited about it. It's a free upgrade. Both of my computers, my PCs that I use will run it, so I don't have these issues. I'm quite looking forward to having a refresh for no money. I don't have any complaint about that. All I would ask is that Microsoft get rid of the flipping ads and the
bloatware.
Oh my goodness! Nobody needs Candy Crush on their pre-installed on their machine. Like, if you want to play Candy Crush, install Candy Crush. I don't need Microsoft to install it for me.
But yeah, they've enhanced the gaming. You can now have auto HDR on Candy Crush.
I've never played Candy Crush, so I have no idea what that will do. It's actually I'm only joking about that. Really, it's what irritates me is the suggestions that pop up on the lock screen. I know you can switch it off, but it shouldn't be switched on. I shouldn't have that stuff. I shouldn't have adverts appearing in the start menu and have to go and switch those off. I shouldn't have this new experience thing that they brought out the other day, the news and other things that just suddenly appeared in my system tray. It's like, I don't want that. I didn't ask for that.
But Windows, I mean, Apple does the same thing as well with certain things. That you know, how long was it before you can, the stock app, who uses a stock app on the iPhone, for example, and things like that you can't delete. Well, you certainly didn't used to be able to delete it. I think you might be able to now. But and feeds of stuff, and sometimes you just don't want that. I can see some people would find it useful, but make it a choice as opposed to an imposed thing that you then have to go and hunt around to turn off. But I suspect there's revenue generated if Candy Crush gets installed or if certain things are promoted. I'm sure that Microsoft get a little bit of the old moolah for that.
Perhaps they do. It's difficult to imagine where they're getting all of their money from for Windows now. I suspect most of their revenue gets generated from Office 365.
Yeah. Ooh, we did that again.
Yeah. Anyway, Pete, we've been nattering on for a little while. So let us know in the comments section. What do you think about the various issues we've discussed today? Would you be happy to have an M1 iPad with Thunderbolt not working very well? Does it bother you? What about Windows? Are you looking forward to it? Is it something you actually use? A lot of our subscribers are Mac users.
Yeah, and Nuckbox or Nukebox.
Yeah, and of course the most important issue of the day is who did the best dad joke.
Well, I think I'm going to defer to you.
I think we'll defer to our subscribers, Pete. They'll tell us, I'm sure.
Yeah, there'll be fisticuffs at dawn. Anyway, I suppose we ought to bang it on the head there and let people get on with their lives, unless they're listening to us at 2 times speed, in which case thanks for joining us for the last half an hour.
And otherwise, thanks for spending an hour with us. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the support and all the comments, and welcome to any new subscribers. And we'll see you again soon on the Constant Geekery podcast.
Cheerio.